People typically like give me a little money, you know, right?
It feels like every time a superhero movie underperforms at the box office, the most recent example being Shazam, a lot of people start to go down this path of, oh my god, the future of superhero movies are doomed, but we do not feel that way. We're gonna discuss our thoughts in this video, but go down to the comments and let us know what you think.
I'm good. I'm doing okay.
Hey everybody, it's Hannah Saulic, the head of video here at CinemaBlend, with Sean O'Connell, our managing editor.
What's up, bro?
Maybe don't say anything too weird.
Sean, you like superheroes, right?
I am fond of the heroes that wear capes and spandex. Yes, Hannah.
Can we focus, please? Tony, what's going on?
Box office numbers aren't great for recent Marvel and DC releases. The MCU is slowing down on the number of projects they're releasing.
Why?
You are very expensive.
Plus, the DCU is in a weird limbo state with an upcoming reset, and people are starting to ask if audiences are experiencing superhero fatigue.
Are you yawning?
So I thought it'd be good this week for us to just kind of chat through
All the crazy drama and nonsense that's going on in the world right now, in my world right now.
And for all of the people watching that normally watch our DC videos week to week, we are going to get into all of this Shazam, Zachary, Levi, Dwayne Johnson drama that I'm sure everybody saw that report from the Wrap going around, and we'll kind of talk about specifically with Shazam, sort of do like a case study of what went wrong, because I think there's a lot there with like the way that they marketed it and all the DCU confusion. But going back to this larger question of just like, how are we feeling about the future of superhero movies? Are you optimistic? Are you fatigued?
I mean, it'd be crazy not to look at the things that have happened and not think about the fact that we're beyond like a fatigue and it's more like a malaise. That the crowds that once showed up for these phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 films of Marvel specifically, and some of the bigger DC projects are just not there anymore. People are okay to skip, what used to be a must-see. And, it's interesting. The other day I was watching an audience reaction to the Portals scene from Endgame.
Avengers!
Assemble.
And still to this day, like, I get chills watching that play out, and I don't know if we're ever going to get anything like that again.
That's rude.
I don't think the genre is dead necessarily, especially with Marvel and DC both planning well into the future for stories that they would like to come. And I don't doubt that, we're going to see a number of really great movies in each of those franchises that are going to attract a ton of audience members. But I don't think that the superhero genre has quite a hold on pop culture as it once did, say, 10 years ago. And I don't really know if it's going to find some way to recapture that.
These are confusing times.
I wonder if part of this sort of framing of like, oh, there's a malaise, like you said, is just because we're comparing it to something that's kind of a once in a lifetime event. The Infinity Saga was such almost kind of like a, this has never happened before. Like there was, even if you weren't into superhero movies, like even my mom, I remember, was like, oh, it's cool, right? Like they're getting everybody together from all these films, and like that's really hard to do. And I'm like, yeah, Mom, it's cool. Like, good job.
Listen to your mom.
What do you think about that? Like, do you think it's a framing issue, or do you think there is some legitimacy to just maybe this issue of like quantity versus quality and all that stuff?
Well, I think we just have reached a point of the cycle with each of these franchises, with both Marvel and DC, that we're coming out of the gate with characters that people just don't care that much about.
They're Hulk fans.
Wait,
they don't know Ant-Man.
Oh, he
Nobody
feels
does.
bad.
Nobody does.
No.
With all due respect to Ant-Man necessarily, and even Shazam, for the most recent examples, like these are not characters that people outside of people who love comic books know or care about.
Do you have any idea how many ants there are?
And nothing that they're seeing in the marketing or the urgency of a huge story to buy into is pulling people into the theaters.
I don't care who this guy is.
I don't deserve these powers, if I'm being honest. Like, what am I even contributing?
They haven't made us care about the characters that they have at their disposal the way that we would for a Superman or a Batman, or even like a Captain America or an Iron Man, which were A-list heroes. And that's why I think when Spider-Man rolls around, because he's so beloved, no matter what Spider-Man movie you put out, it's going to do well.
No, I understand.
But these other newer characters, if you have to educate the audience and make them love these characters, a couple of things have to go well. Casting has to go well. And then the movie has to be really great. And if the movie is tremendously great, then word of mouth is going to draw people to it.
And apparently it works.
I think
It works.
It works.
It works.
How are we weighing sort of the continuity of the DCU, what will be the DCU and the MCU, versus just like going to the movie for the movie's sake. Like, do you think these films have to have that element of like tying into something in order to be successful?
No, I don't. And here's two examples, although they are tough to use because they kind of prove the first point, which I was trying to make. Because if you look at Robert Pattinson's Batman, it was his own standalone thing. It was successful, okay, it didn't cross $1 billion, but it made a ton of money, critically acclaimed. So it's independent of a larger story, and people they didn't go to it because they wanted to buy into what the next story was going to be. Word of mouth drove them to it. Now, at the same time, it's Batman. So, had
also,
that
those
happened,
trailers were great.
Yeah. Oh, they're terrific.
And it was such a distinctly different take on Batman than we've seen recently. So.
And what I mentioned earlier with casting, like you saw Colin Farrell, in disguise as the Penguin. You saw Zoe Kravitz as Catwoman. People were fascinated to see what Pattinson was going to be like. Mm-hmm. People know Matt Reeves. He's a talented director, and people wanted to see what he was going to do in this world. It had all this pedigree that sort of came with it. If you do that for a character that isn't, on that level and it succeeds, then it starts to prove the point that like, oh, it just make a good movie and people will come. Because outside of that, you look at things like James Gunn's The Suicide Squad, which again, you can sort of point to and say, all right, it went to HBO Max the same day and date, so maybe that hurt its box office. But, it hasn't really had the cultural. And they invested a lot in Harley, in Margot Robbie's Harley, but Birds of Prey didn't do as well.
Yeah. I got it.
So you can't really say that anything outside of a traditional Batman film hasn't done box office, huge box office numbers for DC. I think they're still sort of chasing. I'm sorry, Aquaman did really, really well. And maybe that was a combination of strong reviews and strong word of mouth, because I think people coming out of those early screenings really, really liked it a lot. Momoa's got a fan base, but I don't know if Momoa opens a movie. Do you think Jason Momoa opens a movie?
Back then, probably not. But I'm trying to remember. Do you remember when the Justice League came out?
Oh, that shithole.
Wasn't he kind of one of the bright spots that people were talking about out of that movie?
I think
I think a lot of people were curious about just the tech in general.
The water.
And what they've been able to do with visual effects. But I think a lot of the appeal around Aquaman was like, how are they gonna do this?
Definitely. Yes, there was a lot of curiosity around that. I think Jason and Gal have both, people are super on board with their interpretations of their characters.
An Amazon working with an Atlantean.
Half Atlantean. So cool, and I'm just me.
I'm not sure, even before Zachary Levi did all this most recent stuff that he's been doing, I'm not sure people loved him as Shazam. I think they liked him as Shazam. I think he was fine. But I think a movie would have had to have been spectacular for people to be like, all right, I'm also on board with him because even my personal opinion about Fury of the Gods is that I liked almost everything around him more than I liked him. Not that I disliked him in the character, but I really loved The Daughters of Atlas. I thought Jack Dylan Grazer was great with Djimon Hounsou. I thought the special effects were terrific. And then I got to and then Zachary Levi was good in the role.
Well, and I've seen a central criticism, and then let's get into box office with Shazam and what really happened. But I've seen a central criticism around Shazam, and this was kind of present in the first movie, but more so in the second movie in reviews that I read, where it was just like there's such a clear disconnect between what Zachary Levi is doing and what Asher Angel is doing. They're in two completely different movies. And when you put that up in contrast against Adam Brody and Jack Dylan Grazer, they're fantastic. You totally believe when it switches from Jack Dylan Grazer to Adam Brody. They're doing the exact same thing. It totally works.
Good point.
It's A+. I could watch the two of, I want a movie just the two of them.
Yeah.
But Zachary Levi is doing something so completely different from what Asher Angel is doing. And that Asher Angel is always sort of kind of this reserved, really pent up teen who's very serious most of the time. And then it's the second Zachary Levi is on screen, he's kind of dumb. He's not really giving a shit. He's just ugh. And that's just not how Asher Angel's playing it. So there's a weird sort of I don't want to say you don't know who the character is, but it's hard to make a connection because you're I sometimes forget that they're supposed to be the same person,
Nope, that's a very valid critique. And I don't know how you rectify that. But that's a critique that I think is going from people who have seen both of the movies and are super invested in it. When we talk about the box office, I think there are much bigger reasons why it didn't it didn't live up to expectations.
So that's that. Now, just to address some of the tea that's been spilled and going on out there.
For me, I think there's a couple things happening with Shazam that from the get-go I didn't really understand, and I think it hurt it in its performance. Is that, I don't know how you feel, but after watching the movie, looking back at the trailers, I'm so confused as to why they chose to lean into certain elements and not others.
By the way, this is a little bit of a spoiler alert for anybody who hasn't seen the movie. Sorry!
The thing that really struck me was like, I always kind of felt like, where's Mr. Mind? Why are the Daughters of Atlas here? The movie has a very logical explanation, which is at the end of Shazam 1, he breaks the staff, throws it away. Movie picks up right on that. I'm like, oh, cool, this like actually makes sense, because I was kind of expecting it to just like ignore that thing. You should put that in the trailer.
Yeah.
And make people like, because I know that like general audiences don't care about that, but I just feel like from like a comic book movie fan, that would just be so much more like, oh, this is a cohesive continuation of this story. I also don't feel like they leaned really on the aspects in the trailers of like what made this movie work, which I thought was a lot of the humor between Jack Dylan Grazer and literally whoever he's on screen with. He's barely in the trailers. And also like the stuff in the lair, like that stuff's really cool. And like, why aren't you kind of showing that? Not that I don't think the villains matter, but I just think there was so much emphasis on like, Billy, you don't get it kind of thing.
This is very personal, Billy.
And you mentioned in your review video that like you were getting like Harry Potter vibes. And like when I was like listening to you say that in editing, I was like looking in the trailer, I'm like, what the hell is he talking about? Harry Potter vibes. Like trying to find something in the trailer to like visually represent what you were talking about.
Sure.
Nothing. But you totally get that in the movie. And I'm like, I just feel like they could have picked different elements that really showed like, hey, this is a really unique corner of DC that we're going to explore. And they did that, I guess, a little bit with showing some of the creature design stuff.
Barely, but they wanted to hide that stuff because it was third act stuff, but that's what made it unique.
I feel like they almost gave away more of the third act in showing a lot of like the final fight with the dragon. I don't know. And it also like, I'm sorry, I'm rambling, but the other thing too is like the theater I went to was full of children. Like I was like one of like 3 adults that weren't like parents. And you don't get that from the like I wonder if they almost had kind of a confusing thing of like they didn't even know who their audience was, because even like Zachary Levi was saying when a lot of the reviews started to come out like this is a family movie, like the perfect family movie, and a lot of the cast started like saying that.
Fun for the whole family movie. It's like Goonies, guys.
But like that's not what you get from the trailers, and I don't even know that that's necessarily what you get from the movie itself, even though there were a lot of families in the audience. You know what I mean?
There's
like,
kid stuff in it, but there's also like someone pointed out there's a scene where the Daughters of Atlas make a teacher like step off a building
very dark.
and land on the ground and their body
and
like explodes. Yeah.
You look at me and you're like, why so dark?
It explodes. So that's disturbing. Like you're not quite the family movie that you want to be.
Family!
Let me tell you what Shazam should have leaned on heavily. Rachel Zegler, who's gonna be an enormous star and has screen presence for days. Cut a trailer that starts with all of that
and
really
Jack Dylan
cute,
Grazer.
like
He's
their
so
high school
charming.
scenes. How cute were their high school scenes together when they were like playing off of each other? Like do a whole trailer that's basically like these two cute kids, but she's a daughter of Atlas and he's a member of a superhero family, and watch what happens when all that goes to pot. Like she doesn't have a word of dialogue in any of the trailers.
I know.
And I was like, oh. Okay.
And I thought she was one of the most memorable parts of the movie.
People are like, this doesn't make any sense, because it doesn't make any sense.
I'm focusing too much on the trailers because a bunch of people are like, it doesn't matter.
Well, you're right. No, it matters. I think it matters when you're convincing general public to go.
If you're trying to entice people, like spend your money here, to your point, when things are tight and it's a packed month, I don't understand. Like there's nothing in April. I don't understand why DC or Warner Brothers wasn't like, let's just, since we're already pushed Shazam back 18 million times, let's just put it in April when there's literally nothing else.
100%. And that's not alone. Like 65 is a movie that Sony should have put in April.
Literally, like, if I didn't work here, would have never even heard of that movie.
No, but it's good. It's actually entertaining, and it got buried.
I get what that's like.
I think this is a very busy March with really popular movies. And I just don't think that people honestly have the expenses to go see everything that's out just to go see it. I think Creed 3 was more popular. I think that people are very excited for John Wick 4.
Listen, I love Keanu Reeves. If you want to go see John Wick, fucking go for it.
And I even think that the positive word of mouth on Dungeons and Dragons has a lot of people saying, I'm just going to wait for that.
I'm a planner. I make plans.
What else? There was something else that came out besides Creed 3 that was huge. What is it?
Scream.
Thank you.
There's too much.
Thank you. No, that proves the point right then and there. There's just like the dollars that people had reserved to go to the theater went to something else. Sometimes it's just that simple.
But John Wick's not a family movie.
If Shazam had one more weekend of buffer, I think that the word of mouth, because people are coming out of it and largely saying, like, it's good.
I didn't think it was bad. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I
didn't
enjoyed
think
it
it was
too.
like the best DC movie I've ever seen. I'm probably not going to like rewatch it anytime soon, but like it was an enjoyable movie, I thought.
Yeah, but it's going to get slaughtered by John Wick.
You know, pop, 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 pop.
I really do think the limbo that these movies are in, with the announcement of a new DC slate, meant that even diehard DC fans were like, why am I seeing this if it doesn't mean
Especially when you spoil
anything?
Wonder Woman in your commercial.
Stick to saving the world, kid.
Now, I'm torn on that because I don't know if it's I get that it's a spoiler, but it's not a spoiler in the fact that, like, if you tell me she's in it, I kind of do want to go see, like, what the context is, you know? Like, if you're on the fence, am I going to pay to go see this? And then I see in the trailer that she's in it, that would convince me that, like, oh, cool, I want to go see that because she's in it kind of thing.
I love you.
Like, I don't think it helps the movie to not put her in the marketing. I think it gets more people who really like her interpretation of the character to at least go say, like, oh, now I'm going to go check this out because I just want to see what Gal's doing in the park.
I really like her.
Yeah, I'm thinking about it in comparison to Black Adam.
Been a while since anyone's made the world this nervous.
Even though, like, I knew Henry shows up and people were very much saying, like, he just kind of shows up and he says something and that's it.
Yeah.
It almost, because I couldn't see it, made me be like, well, I gotta go see this for myself.
Don't believe everything you hear, son.
Okay.
Whereas, like, if someone's like, if I see the commercial of Wonder Woman and then someone's like, yeah, she's in it, I'm almost like, oh, okay, well, I can kind of fill in the blanks maybe from that visual.
Okay.
Like, I wonder if that has anything. I'd be curious to see what people have to say about that.
See, and
Or
I
if
bet
any
that
marketing people do research about showing versus not showing.
We should at least discuss it.
Shazam's decision to include Wonder Woman was probably a direct reaction to them not showing Henry Cavill in any of the Black Adam stuff and sitting on that as tight as they did, that this time they were just like, fuck it, we're going to show her. And maybe that'll help kind of thing.
It wasn't a bad idea.
And it didn't.
What did Black Adam make? Do you know?
It opened to like
weekend?
60 something. It did like 65, I want to say.
Maybe
and was
they
considered a
shouldn't
bust.
have showed her.
But then it went down. It dropped like 60%. Yeah.
Which, because and a lot of people were like, oh, people just went to the theater to see Henry, and that's pretty much it.
And I think that's true.
Cool. Yeah. If it ain't broke.
I want to pinpoint something that you mentioned, though, about the villains, because I think the villains are super important. And I think that audiences are investing more and the studios are telling you how important the villains are. Like the Ant-Man marketing was very heavily on, hey, Kang is here and Kang is going to be important, Kang this and Kang that. And with every Batman movie that comes out, the villains are important. And even with Spider-Man No Way Home, people cared about the villains. With Wakanda Forever, it was the introduction of Namor. Like, these are important people. And Shazam doesn't have a standout, antagonist.
Well, he does, but that person didn't want to be involved.
Oh.
I
didn't even get that. Yeah.
Wow.
You're right. Yes, very true. Oh, well, okay, yes. Had they gone down the route of pairing Black Adam and Shazam, maybe we would be having a completely different conversation.
So our intent, our desire, Walter Hamada, Peter Safran, David Sandberg, myself, everybody, we had a awesome scene that would have tied me in to the JSA with Hawkman and with Cyclone, and we were thwarted.
Real quickly, before we wrap up, what were your thoughts on all that rap stuff that came out, that report?
Pretty fascinating. I think that everyone involved handled that poorly. I don't know who kept who out of whose cameo scene, and I wrote a piece for CinemaBlend where I said that a cameo scene in whoever's movie wasn't going to save either of these two franchises, because neither of the movies are great. You didn't come out of them saying, like, you got to go see this movie. Like, don't hang your success or failure on a post-credit scene. That's not the reason to get people to go and see a movie. But I think that I'm fascinated by that little vacuum of power that took place between the old regime and James Gunn and Peter Safran coming to power, because obviously The Rock and $7 tried to do something and tried to throw their weight around.
I don't fault them for. Like,
No,
I'm not
it's
mad.
fine. Yeah, right. It's fine. And
Thanks for trying.
Maybe they had a plan.
Listen, I haven't blamed anybody.
I don't think we know the full story. We may never know the full story, but no one comes out of that situation looking good.
Truth is good, and we should all live in it, guys, even when it's hard.
By the way, are we going to
supposed to be.
SnyderCon? Are you coming to SnyderCon with me?
I don't know. We have a meeting about that later. Are you going? Can you tell people you're going?
Oh, I'm going. Yeah, I'm 100% going. As long as I get to there's tickets.
Come with me first to deliver this, and then we'll get you a ticket to the war.
Going back to this larger question of just like, how are we feeling about the future of superhero movies?
Living in the past, make your own future, Barry.
I don't think this is going to have any effect on The Flash.
No.
Like, I think people are really, really excited for The Flash. I think, to your point, people are really, really excited for Guardians.
I'm with you in that I'm not worried about The Flash, but for two reasons. A, The Flash is way more popular than Shazam. Flash has been on CW for decades, or however long that show has been going on.
Yeah.
And the character in general is more popular than Shazam. You have Michael Keaton coming back as Ben Affleck. As Michael Keaton's playing Ben Affleck.
That'd be fun.
Do it.
You have Michael Keaton and Ben Affleck both coming back as their versions of Batman. And that nostalgia is going to fuel, like, I can't tell you how many people who are older than me who have come up to me and said, can't wait to see the new Batman movie this summer. And I'm like, well, it's a Flash movie. And but
sure.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and I know it's not all about the trailers and the marketing, but like that is a really good trailer.
Yes.
The Flash trailer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I feel like with the DCU about to reset and Marvel kind of getting its stuff together and being like, we just released way too many things, and the whole VFX drama that was happening.
Right.
With all that, like, I just think it was a weird lull, and I think people are trying to compare it to the Infinity Saga, and that's just not a fair expectation.
I keep telling everybody they should move on and grow.
Well, but
So I'm optimistic. I'm excited for Guardians, and I'm excited for The Flash. So.
I'm very excited for each of those two. And here's the thing. If I'm being bluntly honest, the only superhero movie that I haven't liked is Black Adam. I think Black Adam's a terrible movie. But I really liked Quantumania. I really liked Shazam. I'm not saying I loved any of these films, but I really enjoyed them while I was there. I really enjoyed Love and Thunder. I didn't care for Multiverse of Madness. I thought that was kind of a mess. No Way Home is one of my favorite films of all time.
Don't get me started on that.
Personally, they keep making superhero movies for the next 10, 20 years. I'm going to be there.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't really care if Joe Public wants to be there or not. Like, let Joe Public go out and watch whatever else they want to watch. I'm okay if these become movies that are more towards comic book fans and superhero fans. And so just a quick comparison to like what's going on with Star Wars right now. Like, I like Mandalorian. I think it's entertaining, but there's a bunch of like behind the scenes Star Wars deep dive stuff that I don't really care about. Sometimes I'll go read up on it. Sometimes I won't, but I just like to turn it on as like a week to week, like, this was fun. And that's where I feel like people are with some of the superhero movies now. They go and they're like, this is fun, but they're not as invested.
Except for when it's not a good movie, and then they're like, that wasn't as good as it could have been, and then everyone's like, oh my god, the genre's dead.
Right.
There might not be a future.
Maybe we don't have to jump to that so quickly. Let's just enjoy them as movies the way they're meant to be. How about that?
I agree with that sentiment. That is a very lovely note to end on.
Thank you.
For everybody watching, let us know what you think in the comments, and we'll be back hopefully next week with another DC video talking about whatever happens to come up. And that's how we're ending the video.
That was such a goddamn, leave us alone, people. Whatever happens to come up. That is the equivalent of we are still here at Comic-Con.
Still here.
Oh, that was great.
Sometimes I wish I was better at this job.
That's how I feel every day, Hannah.
Hey everybody, thanks for watching. If you like this video, be sure to let us know in the comments, and also give us a like because it actually does help us. Sean and I talk DC almost every week, and with all that's going on in the DCU, there's a lot to talk about. So if there's ever anything that you want us to research or deep dive on, definitely let us know in the comments. Also be sure to hit subscribe and turn on your notifications so you don't miss a thing.
Welcome back to San Diego, where we are currently still covering Comic-Con 2018, and we are thrilled to be joined.
That's how we feel.
Somehow we're going to get through this. We're still here, folks.